Hey guys, what's up? Chris Blum here with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the 3 steps to finding your next office space. So before I dive into the 3 steps, a little bit of background information. I work in the San Francisco Bay Area for Cushman & Wakefield, which is a publicly traded global commercial real estate company, full service line. Before that, I worked in Austin, Texas for another company, Colliers International. So in this video, I'll try to keep the knowledge as general as possible, but I do recommend that you work with a local broker who understands your market. And for this video, while the tips can be used on your own or with a broker, parts of it are predicated on the assumption that you'll be using a broker. So with that said, let's jump straight into tip number 1, which is knowing your company's goals and priorities. So the place that I like to start with my clients is looking at space planning and the size of the space that you're going to need. So this here is a simple space planning worksheet I put together for this video. Obviously they can get quite more complex and look at kind of growth trajectory over time and many more rooms and specialized uses depending on the tenant type. But this just gives you an indication of one simple way of looking at, how many private offices are you gonna need? How many conference rooms do you need? Is there a need for a break room, or is there a need for a storage room or server room? And from there you can get to a rough approximation of the square footage that your company will need. And then a quick cheat that you'll see in the right hand side is that typically we recommend, as a quick rule of thumb, somewhere between 150 to 200 square feet per person as a general rule if you just want to get to a quick number. So if you're a 100-person company, you might need between 15 and 20,000 square feet. So once we've figured out how much space you'll need, the next logical place to go is price. So what is your budget, either from an annual or monthly perspective? This will really help you and your broker know what types of space to look for, what locations, what quality of building, and so on. So one quick note here is a lot of times you'll hear terms thrown around: full service lease or industrial gross or triple net. So I'll make another video on this, but if you just know your annual or your monthly budget, your broker can help you back in to which spaces work and help give you an approximate comparison of all the different spaces, even if they're on a different lease type. So once we understand your size and your price, we can start to think about some of the more differentiating factors when it comes to office space. So this may mean amenities. So is there an on-site gym? Is there an on-site cafe? Is there outdoor seating areas? This can be identity. Are you looking for a single standing building that's become quite popular in the San Francisco Bay Area, so old warehouse space converted into creative flex office space? Or are you okay being in a more suburban traditional office complex? This will also help with growth, so you can grow in one place over time. Do you need to be close to transit? Is that something that's important to your employees from a recruiting and retention standpoint? The train or the buses, or parking? How much parking will you need? Other things to think about are term comfortability. So most landlords are going to want a 3 to 5 year term. So if you think that you need more flexibility than that, or you can't commit to that length, then it may be the best thing to look at a sublease option or a co-working option, which is a great potential fit for younger companies, growing companies. There's Spaces or WeWork, right? So they offer the amenities, the Class A build out with more flexible terms. Now there is a price that comes with this, but it's worth it for a lot of companies and can be a great fix. I've found with my clients that there tends to be a point where the price per head starts to make a little less sense, and maybe it's time to start looking into your own private office space. But for the younger companies, or even for larger corporations that want that flexibility, it can be a great option. And then the final thing to think about, as it may impact what sorts of spaces or landlords that you look at, is your build out. So are you a tech company that is okay with mostly open space? Maybe you just need a few conference rooms or a private office or two. Or are you a law firm that needs all private offices and it's going to be quite a heavy build out? So once you've thought about all of these different factors and have an idea of the type of space, the length of term, the price that you want to pay, the quality of the amenities and type of building that you're looking for, then we can move on to step number 2, which is knowing your timing. So timing is important for a number of reasons, but one of the most important is, as we discussed in the last step, knowing your build out. So if you are a law firm that is going to need a heavy build out, or even if you're the tech company that maybe wants the creative open feel and you're converting a space that was more built out, you're going to need time to have the permits pulled and the construction completed for you to move in. So as a general rule of thumb for most companies, 6 to 9 months out is a good time to begin thinking about your next move. This also coincides with most companies or most leases, the renewal option. So you can also begin to think, maybe I stay in the space I'm in, but I want to look at a few other spaces. So being in the 6 to 9 month range out is helpful in that way as well. For some larger companies, you may need more time, maybe 1 to 2 years if you're going for ground up development or have very heavy build out needs, or just a very bureaucratic process that you have to get through. So the general process for finding space, and the reason that 6 to 9 months is a good rule of thumb, is that once you've understood kind of your priorities and you begin to tour, this process will generally take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. Getting out, touring the market, finding spaces, and prioritizing a few that you think are a good fit for your company. Then you submit a non-binding proposal. Once you've selected the building that you're going forward with and both parties have agreed to that proposal, which kind of gives a general agreement on the business points, then you'll move to lease negotiation, and that can take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the complexity of the document and the counsels of both sides and just how many points need to be negotiated. And then once the lease is signed, then construction will begin. And that's where it may take 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the type of build out and the type of work that you're doing, as well as how backed up your local municipality is with permit applications. Finally, once the space is built out, then you can get in and begin preparing for occupancy. So setting up your furniture, your FF&E, your data and telecom, wiring, your monitors, everything that you're going to need so that when your lease starts, you can actually be working in the space. So this takes a few weeks as well, and it's a good idea to front load those vendors and make sure that they're going into the space at the appropriate time. So a quick caveat to that, obviously not all companies are going to be able to begin this process 6 to 9 months out. So if you are closer to your lease expiration date, you may just have to be more compromising when it comes to some of the business points, or maybe you find a space that isn't a perfect fit in terms of the layout that we talked about earlier in the build out, but it has what you need for the most part, and then maybe you're just doing carpet and paint or moving in as is. Or maybe you're a company that is growing really rapidly and you're 2 years away from your lease expiration date, but you need more space. So in that case, we can go into the market and begin looking, and there's options to help with your current lease. Maybe that you have a termination right, or maybe you can sublease that space and find a new space. So obviously not all companies are going to fall into that 6 to 9 month window, but that is kind of a general rule of thumb. So taking a quick step back, the final and third step is knowing the priorities of your counterpart. So once you've toured the market and have identified 2 or 3 options that would be a good fit for your company, it's great to sit down and understand the priorities of the landlord or ownership group that you'll be dealing with in lease negotiations. So maybe you have a landlord with a imminent exit strategy, and so they want to get the highest face rate possible, and that's what's important to them because that's how commercial buildings are priced. So they may be more willing to give free rent or to contribute tenant improvement allowance, right? Or do the construction for you, in other words. Or maybe you have an owner that's owned the building for 20 years and they don't care as much about pushing face rate because they're not going to sell the building, but they want to get you into the space as soon as possible. Maybe they don't want to give as much free rent, but they'll be a little more compromising on the face rate, and they may not want to spend a whole ton of money on tenant improvements, so maybe they expect that you'll pay for some of the work in the space, right? So once you understand, and sitting down with your broker can help, but once you understand these priorities, then you can pursue the options that are going to be the best alignment and you can submit proposals on those spaces. And a quick note on proposals: so unlike in residential real estate, where when you submit an offer to buy a property, it's legally binding, and if they sign, then you move into contract. Proposals in general in commercial real estate for office space are not. So it's just it's a non-binding proposal that just says the business terms that you would like and that you would be in agreement with paying, and then if the landlord agrees, then you can move to lease negotiation. So I hope these tips were helpful, and leave any questions you have in the comments below, or if you have a lengthier question, feel free to email me. I'll leave my email in the description as well.